ICE is invading the cities of Chicago and Portland, two of Trump's biggest nemesis as far as cities go. They're heavily left-leaning, very Democrat-run, and Donald Trump has used Fox News and other right-wing media outlets to push the idea that these cities are active war zones because of the woke left for years now. So the idea that he's had a fairly easy time passing off the idea that deploying the National Guard, deploying ICE to, ransack the streets, fire CS gas canisters, and beat up people, arrest them, black bag them, and take them away, beat them in the street. All these things, they think it's justified because Donald Trump has done a relatively good job of convincing them it's necessary because the state of Portland and Chicago and all these other left-leaning cities that many of the voters of Trump have never even been to, are just in a untenable state. Now, to be fair, I don't know how much of Trump's base is really supporting this now. In recent days, Trump has announced some things that have led to a lot of his base getting quite upset with him. Notably, the approval of Qatar building a military Air Force base or air base in Idaho on American soil. Like, primarily Trump's fans have been the ones saying, oh, so you're just gonna let terrorists fly above us now? Like, that's pretty much their response. So, yeah, didn't turn out too well. Donald Trump chased the money and took the bribe Qatar gave him, and I guess didn't make the connection that his supporters did not also get a private jet with which to soften the blow of allowing a country with anti-American sentiment and connections to establish a military presence on American soil. It's something that has never happened, as far as I know, in American history prior to, like, the modern era, besides maybe prior to, like, the 1700s, But, like, this situation has been unbelievable. And some people will no doubt still defend this blatant act of fascism cracking down on cities with elected leadership that Donald Trump doesn't like. The federal government should not have power over what the local governments elected by the people of a city get to do. Like, for years, we're hearing about how states should have the right to do this, states should have the right to do that, and the federal government should not overreach. Now that Trump's in charge, though, it's all about federal overreach and defending it at all costs. At least for those who have not been jilted by Trump in recent days. And so, Legal Eagle and his team just put out a fantastic video based on what you guys have been telling me about how people in Portland specifically are responding to the invasion by ICE. Notably, by keeping it weird. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you might have heard the term frogs together strong. You might have seen numerous people dressed up in different mascot outfits or different, like, iconic characters marching in Portland. It's basically, imagine you are going to utilize memes in order to get so much attention on what's happening that the police and federal agents are too scared to do anything out of fear they'll be caught on video beating up a guy in, like, a Lorax suit. Because, like, if ICE dudes beat a guy up in a Lorax suit, that shit's going viral online, and it's not something I think a lot of those ICE guys want to be a part of, is a viral video beating someone on the street up who's wearing a Lorax suit. And that is more or less the strategy. Be so wacky and goofy that any media coverage that comes out about this, how's Donald Trump going to claim these people are, like, turning Portland into a war zone when they're all dressed in, like, colorful shit and wearing, like, novelty shirts, dressed up as, like, iconic characters and mascots, or some of them are just wearing nothing and wearing with, like, ICE eat my ass written on their back. Like, they're basically be so goofy no one could take these protests seriously as an actual threat. Because Trump is desperate to frame any form of protest against him as a threat, so it's a matter of just displaying and performing how lacking of a threat these protests are, so that America cannot try and delude themselves into believing that Trump is right about this being violence that must be stopped with federal troops. Let's take a look at what Legal Eagle has to say about all this.
It's an insurrection, rebellion, anarchy in the streets. Oh, did you miss it? Were you at Pilates when the country descended into lawlessness? Were you scrolling on your phone when it all went down? Hate it when that happens.
True! In fact, you should scroll down below this video and hit the like button and leave a comment and subscribe. It really does help a lot, and if you like my stuff, helps to allow me to keep making content, and it's totally free. And you'll get notified when I go live or upload if you subscribe, so maybe do that.
Or doesn't happen, because a lot of the things the president says are not real.
Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place.
Like that.
I don't think a lot of... Okay, non-Americans definitely don't know, but I think even a lot of, like, suburban and city Americans don't realize how common it is for rural Americans to have never, ever left their hometown. There are literally millions of Americans who were born in bumfuck Illinois, bumfuck Kansas, bumfuck Alabama, bumfuck Arkansas, bumfuck Virginia, bumfuck South Carolina, and they live hours and hours driving on like a highway, on like a main road from the nearest major city, and they've never been there. They've literally never left their town because their town has a post office, a school, a grocery store, restaurants, bars, there's businesses and places to work. Like, it has a small hospital. Like, every small town in America has that, even if it's just a few thousand people living there. Meaning that you could theoretically be born into a small town with just a few thousand residents, grow up there, grow old, and die there. And your only knowledge of the world beyond is what you see on TV and what you hear in the news. And people very much decide what news they're willing to consume based on their biases. If you're born into a very small, conservative, rural town in America and you never leave your town, as millions have never done in their lives in America, then chances are your news sources are like Fox News and Alex Jones. And they're telling you that these cities are burning to the ground, and you'll certainly never go there yourself to find out if it's wrong.
That never happened. But the Trump administration says the president has the absolute right to declare an emergency based on stuff he just made up, and no court can stop him. And he's reportedly considering invoking the Insurrection Act to allow him to put soldiers on American streets to act as policemen.
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed...
J6 is still not an insurrection, by the way, and the Democrats should have just shut up about it and let the Republicans get away with it.
Courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up. Sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed.
Yeah, we do have an Insurrection Act for a reason, and that reason is not because the president makes up stories about roving bands of black-clad Antifa members burning down cities. But you can't talk about the Insurrection Act without first talking about the Posse Comitatus Act. In the United States, the military does not engage in civilian law enforcement. Back in ye olde England, the local lawman would call up a crew of able-bodied men to enforce the law and hunt down criminals. On this side of the Atlantic, the sheriff's posse was a regular fixture of the American West. But after the Civil War, southern states didn't want the federal government using the military to enforce desegregation. And so...
I mean, to be fair, in early America, like early colonial America, law enforcement was done by British soldiers. And that was a big problem. That was like a big problem, that like the soldiers were also the cops. And so obviously that led to many a problem, such as like the Boston Massacre, where, God, was it like a few people in the crowd just threw some rocks at some redcoat soldiers and they just started like fucking unloading into the crowd. And that was like, it was a big deal to have a bunch of guards unload firearms into a crowd of people back then. That hadn't happened before. And so the first time a bunch of guys with guns unloaded into a crowd, it of course became an iconic moment in American history. Kind of really set the stage, low-key. When you think about it, America started with a public mass shooting. And of course the military soldiers could quarter themselves in your home. That I believe it's the Fifth Amendment that bans the military of America from doing that. So yeah, like there's a lot. Oh, Third Amendment, my bad, not Fifth. I always mix up Fifth and Third for some reason. But yeah, like that was also a thing even like early in America's existence. Like the Patriot military, like the Continental military, was also law enforcement in many of like the larger settlements and cities in colonial America. However, it is true that we very quickly adopted the not private militia, but like the armed citizens forming a well-regulated militia model, where it's like the town of Salem has its like group of strong, able-bodied men with a good moral compass and head on their shoulders who, you know, if a murder happens in town, they're gonna get their muskets and flintlocks and torches, and they're gonna go out on a big investigation to find out who killed the guy. And, you know, they're gonna run an investigation, they're gonna find out who did it, and in early America, you'll be held for a trial, and you'll be tried against a jury of your peers and deemed guilty or not guilty. You know, we had a pretty good system. I will say we figured out a pretty good system compared to a lot of the rest of the world. I don't know why I got stun locked on this. Colonial American history is just interesting. I like talking about it. Yeah, Assassin's Creed 3. Hell yeah, I appreciate the reference, E-Man.
Congress passed the Posse Comitatus Act in 1878 to make sure that the former Confederacy could implement Jim Crow laws, ensuring that formerly enslaved Black Americans could never vote or exercise political power. The act is just one sentence. It says, whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or Act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, or the Space Force as a posse comitatus, or otherwise to execute the laws, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. And despite its sordid origins, the Posse Comitatus Act has become a pillar of American civil-military relations. In this country, the military does not enforce the law. We do not have soldiers in the street. We have civilian law enforcement, both federal and state, and the military has its own justice system, separate and distinct from civil courts. But Donald Trump has never understood this. Way back in 2013, he tweeted, "We need our troops on the streets of Chicago, not in Syria." That would have been entirely illegal, but in 20...
It really is wild how much Trump told all of us exactly what he was this whole time, and if you pointed out, hey, Trump admits to all of this, you get called Trump derangement syndrome.
2013, Trump was just a civilian, so it didn't matter if the star of The Apprentice didn't understand the Posse Comitatus Act. Today, it matters. But Trump's understanding of civil-military relations has not evolved.
And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. As president,
he's been open about the plan since the start. And when you acknowledge his plan is fascism, his plan is to wipe out his opponents using military action on the streets of America, you're told you're insane. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
I will never hesitate to defend our people from threats of violence, from the horrible plague that's taking place from within.
No, we cannot use American cities as training grounds for our military. Are you crazy? This isn't the Hunger Games. We have millions of civilian law enforcement officers whose actual job is to wield the police power to ensure that people follow the law. And if you think that crime rates are a good metric for how good a job cops are doing, well, crime rates are down everywhere, particularly in cities. But that's just in the real world.
Once again, I have to bring up this stat, because if you operate in politics believing that, let's say that the Democrats need to start, like, appealing to populist perspectives more often, I ask you to be more hesitant in that, because I want to show you 2 data points that make me want to take the black pill. Here, let me bring up this stat. This is chart number 1 that I want to compare. Here it is. Oh, someone did the side-by-side. This is so good. This article's simply called, "Violent Crime Has Plummeted in the US, but Most Americans Have No Idea." This article's from 2014. Oh no, This is only a 2014 article. The trend is even more insane and enraging today. Can we find a more modern version of this graph? Where can I find the modernized version? Please. Please. Okay, we'll have to go off of this one then. But this stat right here should be like it should genuinely like break your brain. This chart right here. This is year by year, the rate at which people or the percentage at which people is this violent crime victimization rate? Wait, oh no, they cut off. This isn't the image I'm looking for. God, where's that image? The image that compares people's perception of crime to the actual crime rates in America year by year. It's so good. It's such a good chart to make this point. I always have to find it, though. Is this it? Here it is. Fucking found it. Let's go. socialstudieslab.org. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The crime rate in 2020 was 60% lower than in 1980. Critical analysis, tons of stuff. Wait, what? Page you're looking for not found? Well, hopefully the chart I'm looking for still loads. Here it is. Here's the chart. Do not 404 on me. I want to open the image in a new tab. Oh no, you gotta be. I thought this would be an easy thing to find. Okay. When I edit this video, this is the part where I want to edit back in because it took me a long time to find this graph. Okay. Now, for finally making my point, here's that graph I was talking about that took me forever to fucking find. Figure 1. Americans' perception of crime. The dark blue line is the percentage of people who say that crime is increasing each year. And the light blue line, is the rate at which violent crime is actually happening or increasing. And so as you can see, for a while, like you go like from 1996, 1997, 1998, all the way until 2001, people's perception of crime and the rate of crimes dropping more or less equaled out, right? Something crazy must have happened in 2001, though, that made Americans' perception of the issue completely diverge from the real issue itself. And so we see a consistent, besides the occasional bump, but for the most part, a very consistent downward trend of crime year by year. And meanwhile, with each passing year, and this chart ends at 2013, I promise you, I've seen more updated charts. The trend is getting even more stark, like straight upward spike. People are continuing to perceive that there is more crime each year as crime proportionally drops. Like, let's say crime drops 10%. That year, Americans will think crime went up 10%. That trend tends to follow quite concretely. Americans, or at least the majority of them, believe in the opposite of reality, as it is depicted in graphs and data, on a lot of issues. When it comes to crime, their perception is completely off base with reality. When it comes to economics, under Biden notably, Biden's economic policy was pretty fucking good. Literally the most pro-working class administration America has ever had, and by a lot. Also the most pro-union administration we've ever had. The economy grew more under Biden proportionally than any president that we've had before. More economic growth than any president before. Like unemployment was dropping at record-breaking rates. And yet, if you look at the, like, every metric by which you could rate America's economy, it was improving at like record rates, but in the same way that Americans' perception of crime is exactly the opposite of the true crime stats, Americans' perception of the economy, more often than not, is exactly the opposite of its real state. At least nowadays. It feels like in a post-Trump America, Americans do not even have any clue how good or bad the economy is. Like, the economy is vibes. It's how many people are saying the economy is bad is the economy since Trump entered politics. And I guess you could consider Trump America's 9/11 with the economy. Because now, there is no longer a relatively tight correlation between the actual data and Americans' perceptions. Now they are the exact opposite on that issue as well. And so when you consider that this is how Americans think, I tell you, are you sure you want the Democratic Party to pander to this mindset? Are you sure you want the Democratic Party to become more populist to please the types of people who believe crime is at a record high as it is literally sitting at a record low? Are these the kind of people we want to change our rhetoric and policy to not just appeal to so we can change their positions and get them to vote differently, but are you sure we want to pander to them? Because I don't think so. And this is why I don't like populism. Because if you follow the path of populism, even if your politics and intentions are good, naturally that means you've got to defend and play devil's advocate for people who think this way. The fact is, sometimes the American people are stupid and wrong, they don't know what's good for them, and they will in fact fight, kicking and screaming for what is worse, the worst for them. Americans are stupid. We have the freedom to be stupid, and we use it.
Over at the White House,
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse.
because of DC's unique status as a federally controlled city that is part of no state.
That's a challenge because the economy was good under Biden, but they didn't do a good job explaining it. Well, literally look at like how most people react whenever I bring up that the economy was like record healthy under Biden. People say, but that sounds so tone deaf because so many people are still having problems. And it's like, you are part of the problem. Like if you're the kind of person who hears a Democrat saying, here are 1,000 examples of policies we passed that are actively making America better. Things are better than they have ever been, and they're going to continue to be better. You see that and you say, things aren't better for me. What the fuck? I'm never voting for you again. I'm going to let the other guy take power and undo everything you've done, so none of your plans can unfold. Meanwhile, when a Republican does some shit like this, it like nobody is like, well, you know, things are like none of the Republicans are like, oh well, things could be better. No, when Trump is like, things are better than they've ever been, America's winning so hard, the Republicans believe it. They fully believe it, right? And the fact is, like, the Democrats, when they say America is doing great under their leadership, the Republicans start just running a constant stream of complaining about, like, the Democrats are saying things are better than ever while no one can afford groceries. Isn't that insane? And it's like, wages have risen to record highs under Biden. What do you mean? People can afford groceries now better than ever. And meanwhile, you've got Tucker Carlson going to Russia and like, oh my God, look how cheap the groceries are, right? And people fell for this.
The president was able to call up the DC National Guard and even send in guard troops from other states. There wasn't a tremendous amount for them to do in a city of just 700,000.
The standard of living has stagnated, though. There you go, Jewish Marxian doll. You're doing the thing. See, the Democrats cannot celebrate accomplishments and be like, hey guys, look at what we've accomplished. Think about what we can accomplish in the future to encourage excitement, hype, and enthusiasm around their successes in their party without people being like, but every time. It's like, yeah, no fucking shit, the standard of living has stagnated and there are tons of problems. Like, but if you keep on these problems-ing the Democrats, no one is ever going to have the perception that the Democrats get anything done. And if the Democrats have the false perception that they never get anything done, they can't get elected. And there's a certain point where you can say, oh, well, it's their fault if they can't convince people. This is a country of people who are genuinely retarded. Like, you literally have to learn how to speak to retards, and that is a skill that, like, you can't just learn how to convince retards how to be smart, forehead. You know, like, these people are idiots. Trump supporters are literally incapable of logical thought. You have to find a very particular emotional pathway to convince them. So, yeah, it's weaponized retardation. Yes, it is.
People, though, but that didn't stop Trump from taking credit for ending crime in the nation's capital.
The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way.
Again, he did not end crime in D.C., but that did not stop him from threatening to deploy the military in other Democratic states and cities. It is getting crazy out there, and so now is probably a good time to wipe all your personal and private information off the internet. Your cell phone number, home address, email address, private social media accounts, and
segment?
Tons of sensitive data are shockingly easy to purchase on emergency powers delegated by Congress. We got constantly shifting tariffs because of the emergency trade deficit. We shipped a bunch of Venezuelan men, most of whom had never been arrested, to seek out prison in El Salvador because Trump said we were being invaded by the Venezuelan government and invoked the Alien Enemies Act. Trump declares an energy emergency.
According to the people who run it, Sakat has a lifetime, like, no one leaves Sakat unless they're in a body bag, is what people who run that place said in that documentary we watched.
Emergency to override all environmental regulations. It's clear that Congress believed two things when it drafted those emergency power statutes. First, legislators assumed that the president would act in good faith and not just pull the alarm bell and shout emergency every time he wanted to do stuff that would otherwise be illegal. Second, they took as a given that future Congresses would jealously guard their own power and revoke that emergency authority if the president misused it. Obviously, they bet wrong there too. And maybe those legislators believed a third thing, which is that courts would put a stop to any blatant abuse of emergency authority. Sadly, none of that turned out to be true. Instead, the president is treating endemic issues like acute ones, and he says that his own subjective or even blatantly false characterization of an emergency is the final word and cannot be reviewed by any court. So if he says Portland's on fire and needs the military to keep order, then it's on fire and no court can say, what? No, it's not, and block him from sending in troops. One of these emergency delegations of authority by Congress is 10 U.S.C. Section 12406, which empowers the president to take control of state militias in case of invasion, rebellion, or when he is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. That was the authority Trump relied on to federalize California's National Guard. DHS surged ICE agents into the greater LA area, and they encountered random pockets of sporadic violence, which were immediately quelled by the LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department. Trump seized on that moment of violence as...
Yeah, a lot of people, I actually had a couple of Chicago police officers comment on my coverage of the story to add on to a point that I made. I put forward the theory that Chicago's leadership has probably... Because when we were watching the videos of the Chicago protests, if you notice, the ICE guys are all in riot gear and tactical gear, and they're launching like CS gas, and they're attacking protesters who even get a little bit too rowdy, that they can justify like going after them. The cops, though, the actual police department of Chicago, none of them were wearing riot gear. None of them were armed beyond like their basic like carry on their hip. None of them had weapons drawn. None of them were like... I never saw a single instance of them engaging in violence either. And they were actively forming a line between the protesters and the ICE guys. So, like, if you were a protester or an ICE guy, you had to get through the line of cops to get to either party. And I was like, it doesn't really seem like the cops, the actual Chicago police, are helping ICE. It feels more like, it feels more like they've been ordered to keep the peace so that Trump can't escalate things to bring more violence on these people. Like I know it's weird to say, but I think the cops are defending them here. I even had a bunch of people from Chicago, as well as a couple of police officers from Chicago, clarify I was right about that they were in fact ordered to keep the peace so that Trump could not use video of the federal troops getting attacked or having any fights to justify nationalizing the state guard to invade the city. So that was completely right. My instinct on that turned out to be completely right.
Justification to send in the National Guard and Marines.
So in this case, too, it seems likely LA police are probably doing the same thing here. Like, they're present, and your instinct might be like, oh, the cops are there, fuck them. But in this case, the cops are working for local elected leadership who are Democrats and who are actively opposing what Trump is doing. So it is a very safe bet that the cops that are in LA and that are in Chicago are trying to stop things from getting more violent, not do what they normally do, which is, you know, make things more rare cops W. And it's because they have, like, the people at the very top of their city leadership telling them, this is what we're sending you to do. Don't you fuck this up.
The Justice Department argued that the president's declaration that he's unable to execute the laws is unreviewable by any court. Here, have a video. Have two. The Ninth Circuit said that courts do have the right to review the president's determination under 12406, but that it wasn't totally crazy to say that the rioting in LA hindered the president's ability to execute the laws, and so the deployment of the National Guard was legal. Notably, even guardsmen legally deployed under Section 12406 are subject to the Posse Comitatus Act. The state of California sued, alleging that virtually everything the Guard was doing on the ground in Los Angeles violated that law. And Judge Charles Breyer agreed. He said defendants systematically used armed soldiers whose identity was often obscured by protective armor and military vehicles to set up protective perimeters and traffic blockades, engage in crowd control, and otherwise demonstrate a military presence in and around Los Angeles. In short, defendants violated the Posse Comitatus Act. He based that in part on this training slide. See how it's got a list of prohibited law enforcement activities, but 4 of them are highlighted in red? The judge found that the troops were orally instructed that the 4 functions listed in red, security patrols, traffic control, crowd control, and riot control, were subject to a so-called constitutional exception to the Posse Comitatus Act. Essentially, the Defense Department took the position that when federal agents or facilities were under attack, troops are allowed to engage in these law enforcement functions, which may make sense, except that the government took the position that wherever federal personnel go, National Guard troops can accompany them and establish perimeter control, engage in crowd control, and otherwise perform any functions necessary to ensure the execution of federal functions and the safety of federal personnel. And in fact, they argue that even when there is no threat.
It's absurd to me that Trump is doing all this while the government is shut down. Like, a lot of these ICE guys are so dedicated ideologically to the deportations that while you've got every other sector of the government, like, taking time off or quitting during the pay furlough, you've got these ICE agents who are just more dedicated than ever. And I don't think they're getting paid right now, unless Trump, like, somehow managed to rustle up funds to pay the ICE guys even during the shutdown. As far as I know, they shouldn't be getting paid either. And they're still out here. They're doing this shit for free. Totally forgot the government was shut down. That's crazy. It's been shut down for a couple weeks at this point. Like, we're like, what, week 2 into the government shutdown? Did you guys see what Republicans have been trying to do to make the government shutdown, like, hurt Democrats somehow? Oh, fuck, hold on. This one's interesting. You're not going to believe this one. Airports refuse to show DHS Secretary Kristi Noem video blaming Democrats for the government shutdown. Major U.S. airports from New York to Florida to Nevada are refusing to air video showing Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and dog killer blaming Democrats in Congress for the ongoing federal government shutdown. Some of those airports cited the political nature of Noem's message for not showing the video, saying that it violated their policies. Noem in the video says, "It's TSA's top priority to make sure that you have the most pleasant and efficient airport experience as possible while we keep you safe. However, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted, and most of our TSA employees are working without pay." So they're trying to use the government shutdown, and they're trying to force federal institutions to play that video. So if you see, if you're like at a federal institution having trouble with delays because of this government shutdown, you'll see Kristi Noem blaming the Democrats, and you'll know who to be mad at. literally every way they possibly can to evoke a, like, emotional hatred for the left and Democrats in Americans they'll take. That's their entire motivation. Their entire game is they don't need America to love Republicans. They need America to despise Democrats. To be if they can make being Democrat as bad as being socialist or communist in America, that is their goal. They're trying to create an America where, like, if you remember Red Scare era in America, where, like, being accused of being a communist, like, you might have to stand trial for it. You know what I mean? They want to make being a Democrat as serious as being accused of being a Democrat to be as serious as being accused of being a communist in Red Scare America. Anyway, folks, if you enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way whatsoever, and you want to, support the channel for this video, then please leave a like and a comment down below. It really does help a lot, and it's totally free. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos. Follow my social medias, linked down below in the description if you want to see more from me on other platforms. And of course, don't forget to support me directly, financially. Help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xanderhall studio if you would like, by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub to someone else on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xanderhall merch through the Streamlabs link down below. Regardless of how you guys support me, though, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I hope you have a good one.